If a teacher who retired even 30 years ago stepped into today's public school classroom, he or she would be amazed by the student diversity. Students today come to school with a wide variety of abilities and disabilities, cultural backgrounds, customs and beliefs, and learning styles. As an educator, how can we meet all learners' needs? We know a one-size-fits-all curriculum isn't going to meet the needs of such diverse learners, but using the principles of UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, may help address these concerns in the school system. So, what is UDL? Before understanding Universal Design for Learning, let's take a quick overview of the history of universal design. The term universal design was first coined by Ron Clark, an architect who also had a physical disability. He created the term for upfront planning that would allow accessibility for all to buildings, work, and products. Architects began making building plans that would suit anyone so that everyone had access to buildings and choices. Although the initial cost to create and build accessible features within buildings would be higher, money and time would be saved in the long run because structures, products, and spaces would not need to be reconstructed and changed to be accessible. Depending on your age, you may remember when some of these changes were being made in buildings. However, we see examples of this type of accessible design every day. Do you take any of these accessibility features for granted? Think about curb ramps, video captioning, switches to open doors, and speakerphones. These are all examples of universal design elements that we see every day around us. These changes to the physical environment are benefited from a wide variety of people, not only those with disabilities. I'm sure we all walk through the automatic doors when walking into stores. I'm also sure that there are times when you have benefited from closed captioning. Captioning is beneficial to students who are learning English, students who are struggling readers, students with attention deficits, and even students working in a noisy classroom. Think of where you may have benefited from the use of closed captioning. Have you ever read captioning while you're at a restaurant because you can't hear? This is just one of the many examples of how universal design is all around us. Listed on this slide are 7 principles of universal design. I'll overview each of these and explain how the principle can be applied to a classroom environment or a classroom situation. First, equitable use. The design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. An example of equitable use is a classroom website that can be accessed at home, in a school, or another location for students who can't be in class. Also, if speech-to-text capabilities are added, students with low vision or reading difficulties can access the information auditorily. Flexibility in use. The design accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. In a classroom, there might be scissors for both left and right-handed students, and choices in writing instruments. If taking a field trip to a museum, students can click a switch to hear or see an explanation of an exhibit. Sometimes they can even manipulate the display. Simple and intuitive use. Use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language levels. In a classroom, items might be labeled with pictures, symbols, words for access. A computer program that adjusts for ability levels is just another example. Perceptible information. The design communicates necessary information effectively to the user, regardless of ambient conditions or the user's sensory abilities. Examples are adding closed captioning to a video or having step-by-step activity directions recorded onto an MP3 player or an iPad to go along with the written directions on a card or chart. Tolerance for error. The design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. An example is a computer software that guides the user when they make an incorrect response. It might even provide some review or background information on the material presented if needed. Low physical effort. The design can be used efficiently, comfortably, and with minimum of fatigue. A portable or enlarged computer keyboard might help someone with fine motor difficulties express an answer more efficiently and comfortably. Size and space for approach and use. Appropriate size and space is provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use regardless of the user's body size, their posture, or mobility. When taking this into consideration, all students can reach necessary materials and tools. Table and chair heights may be adjusted, and there is just enough room for a wheelchair to navigate in the classroom if needed. A wheelchair ramp may help a student enter a classroom by providing access to the physical environment. But does this alone provide individual access to learning? Not necessarily. So, in 1984, researchers at the Center for Applied Special Technology, or more commonly known as CAST, led the development of Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. They took the 7 principles that we just covered, and then they applied them to learning for individuals who learn differently, with the goal to provide all students with equal opportunities to learn in today's schools. Just as in universal design, UDL has benefited more than just individuals with disabilities. UDL provides a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone. Not a single one-size-fits-all solution, but rather flexible approaches that can be customized and adjusted for individual needs. We know that every one of us has a huge variety of skills, needs, and interests related to learning. Research on the brain has revealed that these differences are as varied and unique as our DNA and as our fingerprints. UDL reflects and supports findings from neurological research, and it bases its principles on 3 brain networks that are involved in the learning process. The recognition network is where we process information gathered by our senses. For example, words that we have read or heard, images that we have seen, and objects that we have touched. This network is all about the information coming into our brains and represents the what of learning. The strategic network helps us to organize our ideas and then plan and carry out tasks based on those ideas. When we answer a question on a test or build a diorama, we're using the strategic network. This network is largely about information going from our brains out to our muscles so that we can act. It is the how of learning. The affective network is about which things interest and challenge us. For example, when a student becomes excited about math because he can use it to measure the speed of a rocket, as opposed to using numbers in a more abstract way, it is because his affective network is engaged by the idea of a rocket. The affective network is about the why of learning, the activities or ideas that motivate us to learn. So while everyone has these 3 learning networks within their brain, they do not work exactly the same in each person. Some people may have a strength in the recognition network, but a weakness in the affective network. Others may have the opposite. But because of these strengths and weaknesses, everyone learns differently.
Neuroscience shows that each brain processes information differently. The way we learn is as different as our fingerprint or our DNA. Here at CAST, we look at 3 brain networks and the roles they play in learning. Recognition networks, gathering facts. How do we identify and categorize what we see, Hear and read. Identifying letters, words, or an author's style are recognition tasks, the what of learning. Strategic networks, planning and performing tasks. How do we organize and express our ideas? Writing an essay or solving a math problem are strategic tasks, the how of learning. Affective networks. Are students engaged and motivated? Are they challenged, excited, interested? These are affective dimensions, the why of learning.
To meet the needs of all learners and support the different learning networks, UDL has developed three main principles to guide teachers in making accessible lessons. They include multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, and multiple means of expression. Let's break each one of these down and take a look at some examples. The first principle of UDL is multiple means of representation. As you know, people receive or perceive information in different ways. Many people can read a textbook or an article and not listen to a lecture to absorb the information and knowledge. Other people, however, may have different needs. For example, people with sensory disabilities, such as blindness or deafness, may need sign language, amplified sound, enlarged print, or braille representations of the same information or content that is given. A student with a learning disability may need print materials read aloud and some type of adaptation for note-taking. Many learners benefit from seeing information presented visually, like on a poster board, a chart, a graph, or a slide to understand the information. Demonstrations, videos, and manipulatives are often helpful, too, in conveying information and material to be learned. There are others who need material presented in a different language. Some need access to more background knowledge, including vocabulary, in order to comprehend what is to be learned. Working from the big ideas of the content helps most learners understand main ideas and later make strategic connections. Providing graphic organizers or outlines can help guide information processing and also help with the memory and transfer of learning later on.
The first principle of universal design for learning is representation. As you know, people receive or perceive information in different ways. Many people can read a textbook or articles or listen to a lecture to absorb the content. Other people, however, may have different needs. For example, people with sensory disabilities, such as blindness or deafness, may need sign language, amplified sound, enlarged print, or braille representations of the same information or content that is presented. A student with a learning disability may need print material read aloud and some type of adaptation for note-taking. Many learners benefit from seeing information presented on a poster, chart, graph, or slide to understand it. Demonstrations, videos, and manipulatives are often helpful too in conveying material to be learned. There are others who need material presented in a different language. Some need access to more background knowledge, including vocabulary, than others do in order to comprehend what is to be learned. Working from the big ideas of the content helps most learners understand main ideas and later make strategic connections. Providing graphic organizers or outlines can help guide information processing and also help with memory and transfer of learning later on. Just as in universal design, providing different options and representation benefits all learners, not just those with disabilities.
Another UDL principle is multiple means of engagement. Once again, what motivates students to attend to and engage in learning varies. Some students enjoy a consistent routine, while others enjoy spontaneity. Some students learn best from a lively discussion or debate, while others prefer working on an interactive computer program with the same content. Some students work best in small groups or using peer tutoring. If students are not engaged, the chances of retaining information may significantly decrease. Engagement considers individual student interests, strengths, and the needs as key to motivation. Activities must be relevant to their lives as well as age, ability, and cultural appropriateness. By providing individual choices to meet learning and behavioral objectives, students can increase the perceived challenge of a task, assess needed supports, and develop pride and self-determination as they work towards their goals. All individuals need to see value and relevance in what they're doing. The level of novelty and sensory stimulation can vary depending on student needs. Specific, timely feedback can also increase engagement. Providing a variety of models and prompts can heighten self-regulation skills. Allowing time and modeling for self-reflection will also help students identify successes and then some next steps.
Another quality of UDL is multiple means of engagement. Once again, what motivates students to attend to and engage in learning varies. Some students enjoy a consistent routine, while others enjoy spontaneity. Some students learn best from a lively discussion or debate, while others prefer working on an interactive computer program with the same content. Some students work best in small groups or using peer tutoring. If students are not engaged, the chances of retaining information may significantly decrease. Engagement considers individual student interests, strengths, and needs as key to motivation. Activities must be relevant to their lives as well as age, ability, and cultural appropriateness. By providing individual choices to meet learning and behavioral objectives, students can increase the perceived challenge of a task, access needed supports, and develop pride and self-determination as they work toward their goals. All individuals need to see value and relevance in what they are doing. The level of novelty and sensory stimulation can vary depending on the student's needs. Specific, timely feedback can also increase engagement. Providing a variety of models and prompts can heighten self-regulation skills. Allowing time and modeling for self-reflection will also help students identify their successes and next steps.
The next principle we will talk about is multiple means of expression. How someone tells you what they know can also happen in many ways. For many people, this may take the form of an oral response, a written report, filling in a bubble sheet, or making a presentation. However, someone challenged by cerebral palsy, the response may come through the click of a switch or an eye gaze. The challenge of navigating the environment to get that response is also important. It requires access to planning and organization. Attention, physical and fine motor, language and/or organizational challenges, and cultural influences can be barriers for some learners. To increase access, communication media must also be varied. Some examples may include text, speech, demonstrations, touching and pointing, drawing, singing, dancing, or building a model. Learners also need tools for composition and problem solving so that they can tell you what they know. Infusing today's media tools with traditional tools can increase flexible options. Students can be trained in the use of tools such as spell checkers, graphic organizers, dictation, and recording to help with this. Opportunities for scaffolding practice and performance with feedback can help learners best express themselves. Scaffolding can be provided for different levels of challenges with varying supports in multiple formats, from human mentors to interactive computer programs that adjust difficulty levels. Finally, it's important to monitor the progress of the learner so he or she can see results. This might take the form of guided self-assessments, questionings, portfolios, photographs, and charts and graphs.